Welcome back. My name's James Johnson, and this is my lovely mother, LaDonna. And if you haven't read the first 5 books of the Song of Ice and Fire series, or seen the first 5 seasons of the Game of Thrones television show, we have seen them all, and we will be talking about spoilers and random theories and stuff. So, just a warning. And this particular episode is going to be one my mama's going to focus on. So, take it away, Mama.
Okay, hi folks. This one is going to be called The Lion of Night. Now, most of you, I think, who have read all the books are going to be a little bit familiar with this, and also the newest book that came out that isn't a novel, but is more of a history. It's mentioned more in there, but if I could give you some background, what I'm going to try to be doing is to draw some parallels between the mythology of the Lion of Night and what's happening right now with the Night's King, and what happened in the past with the Night King. And the fact that Azor Ahai, Night King, Lion of Night, there are many other references in other cultures, especially along Essos, that deal with very, very similar mythologies. So, if we can start with the Lion of Night, and before we do that, James, if you would, bring up the map that is a portion of Yiti, which is kind of to the more eastern part of the very large continent of Essos. Okay, looking at this, you can see the plains of the Jogos Nai. You also see what we are familiar with, which is the Red Waste, which is to our left on the screen that Danny passed through. Underneath that is kind of a more forested or pasture area, which is where Yiti is. And then if you look farther east, you're going to see the land of the Shrikes right below the Gray Waste. And under that, you're going to see a ring fort of 5 fortresses there. That is kind of surrounded by some mountains there, and it is also surrounded by the Bleeding Sea. And again, we just did a video on salt. So we've got a sea there, and sea normally means saline. So you got the Mountains of the Moon and the Bleeding Sea. Okay. Yiti has a story of the Lion of Night, which is a god in Yiti. The Faceless Men, those are the people from the House of Black and White, like Joth and Hagar, believe that is just another representation of the many-faced god. There's even a statue of it in the House of Black and White. And in A Feast for Crows, if you guys will remember, when first entering the House of Black and White, Arya Stark actually notes that there's a statue of a man that has a lion's head seated on a throne which is carved on ebony or some kind of black rock. And we're going to get to that in this discussion. The black line has been posited as possibly the Lion of Night. Now, according to the tales that were told by the priestly scribes, those people who actually wrote down history of Yin, the Lion of Night fathered a son on the Maiden Maid of Light. Now, who was she? Sounds maybe like some pale or glowing person. The Maiden Maid of Light was actually impregnated by the Lion of Night, and they had a son who became the god on earth. Literally, it's called God-on-Earth. There's another reference to Earth there, folks, that James had talked about in a different video, who ruled the great empire of the dawn for 10,000 years before ascending to the heavens. Now, that kind of is a Jesus reference, I think. He didn't actually rule, but he was here, and then he mythologically, or according to faith doctrine, ascended to the heavens. The descendants of the god Earth, so he actually had progeny, ruled the empire after him, each ruling a shorter time than the previous one, until the brother of the Amethyst Empress usurped him in the blood betrayal and crowned himself as the Bloodstone Emperor, which ushered in the long night. The Maiden Maid of Light turned her back upon the world, and the Lion of Night came forth in all his wrath to punish the wickedness of men. So, back to the Lion of Night. if you will look at those 5 forts, which predate the Golden Empire of ET, they are claimed to have been raised by the Pearl Emperor. And again, Pearl is like, seems like it's somebody who's very pale, to keep the Lion of Night and his demons away from the realms of men. Now, jumping from that over to the Night King mythology, as we know, the mythology of, you can take that map down, honey. As to the mythology of the Night King, we know he was 13th Lord Commander of the Wall. We know that he met some pale woman, cold, icy woman, fair-skinned, fair-haired, and he gave his seed to her, and she took his soul. Now, you know, taking his soul can just mean they fell in love, or it can be something magical like necromancy. But, so obviously, it says he gave his seed to her, which, if you go back to the Line of Night, they had a child. And James and I have gone back and forth on what the Night King is. Is he the original 13th Lord Commander? Is he his progeny? I don't know, but I think you need to overlay these myths because there may have been sons born of that line. Kind of like in biblical prophecy, you got the house of David, which ultimately ends up with Jesus, right? Way down the line, you read those chapters, and so begat so-and-so, and so begat somebody, and it ends up with Jesus from David's line. So we may be seeing someone from that particular line. And George R.R. Martin actually was asked about this, and he said about the Night King, he, hold on just one second, let me go back here. George R.R. Martin was asked if there was a connection between the Night King of the White Walkers and the Night's King of legend, and he replied, quote, "As for the Night's King," and Martin said, "this is the form I prefer, Night's King. He is a legendary figure, akin to Lan the Clever and Brandon the Builder, and no more likely to have survived to the present day than they have." So it seems to me that unless he's lying to us, that this is not the original 13th Lord Commander, that it is indeed a progeny. Now, there are other references to Azor Ahai and the Night King in other legends. For instance, in Essos, the Roinar Tall of a Darkness. And now the Roinar are the people that lived among the rivers, and they worship the great turtle and things like that. Mother Roin, Crab King. The Roinar tell of a darkness that made the Roin of Essos dwindle and disappear. That means the river disappeared. Her waters frozen as far south as the joining of the Selharu, until a hero convinced the many children of Mother Roin, such as the Crab King and the Old Man of the River, to put aside their bickering and join in a secret song that brought back the day. Well, that certainly sounds like Azor Ahai, whatever he is or she is, bringing in that song of ice and fire that will bring back the dawn, bring back the day. If further east, other legends, including E.T., state that the blood betrayal began the long night. So there's a blood betrayal. There's some covenant that is broken. The Lion of Night was unleashed upon the world after the Maiden Maid of Light turned her back on it. Now, if you'll recall in Revelations, there are seals that are broken by God when he comes back, and essentially maybe wreak some vengeance on humanity. I think that we have a blood moon and the seas turn bad. Again, we're back to the salt, and all the fishes are dying, and there's an apocalypse coming, perhaps Armageddon. So at any rate, Mother Roin, Mother Earth, she got the Crab King and the Old Man of the River, salt and fresh water, it seems to me, to put aside their bickering and join in a secret song to bring back the day. Now, farther east, It also says, according to a legend from Yi, that during the long night the sun hid its face for a lifetime. Well, that's winter is coming. And it says the sun was ashamed at something none could discover. And disaster was only averted by the deeds of a woman with a monkey's tail. Another great hero, known in different cultures as Herkun the hero, Azor Ahai, Yin-Tar, Nefarion, an eldritch shadow chaser, chasing shadows. The shadows come to dance, my lord, the shadows come to stay. Wielded the flaming sword Lightbringer and led humanity to victory. Some say the 5 forts were built by the Pearl Emperor to guard against the line of night and his demons. The legend of Azor Ahai spread from Ashai and is especially prevalent among the followers of Raholor, or as some of you who have not read the books know, that is the god that Melisandre, he's the Lord of Light, worships. A later prophecy claims that the others will return and Azor Ahai will be reborn to lead the fight. There's also a similar prophecy about the prince that was promised. Now, Azor Ahai and the prince that are promised, you know, we've talked about whether they're the same person, are they 2 people, are they complementing each other, are they yin and yang? And whether or not that prince is a princess. And when Dany went to the warlock place, she sees a vision of Rhaegar Targaryen talking to what looks like Elia Martell. And in it, he is talking to her about the prince that was promised. And at some point during him discussing that with what looks like Elia, he actually, in the House of the Undying, when he says that he is the prince that was promised and his is the song of ice and fire, he actually looks up as he says those words, his eyes meeting Dany's, and it seemed to her as if he sees her standing there. And then, of course, Melisandre, a worshiper of Raholor, again the Lord of Light, has stated that when the red star bleeds, and we just did a comet video, when the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be born again amidst smoke and salt. Let's see. And also the fact that the dragon has to have 3 heads, which seems to indicate that the 3-headed dragon is a part of the prince that was promised, prophecy, and that there have to be 2 other people whom the prince will need to have by his side to show him the way, and I would use him or her interchangeably. Now, if you'll remember the scene that was in the HBO series, which is not in the books, but it was a great scene between Arya and Tywin Lannister when they are at Harrenhal. It was a great exposition of this history because they went back and forth about riding the dragons, and Arya reminds him that there are 2 women riding with him, sisters. So it seems that it may be a man with 2 women, so bear that in mind. At any rate, back to the line of night. So the main thing of this video is simply to show that there are parallels among all these mythologies. I think they're the same history. They're just put into each culture's personal reference points. And we need to think about that. Now, going back to the line of night, there are some references in these books about if you follow this line, in for instance, in the Wikipedia for Ice and Fire, there is some reference to the origins of these stories coming from some black stone that was found. Now that black stone, which they conjecture came from the sky, is really oily. It's not ebony. It's really oily. There is a black stone in Ashai. There is a black stone very similar to this, which is actually the base for either Hightower or the Citadel. And the black oily stone is the same stone that the sea stone chair is made out of. So keep that in mind, that there's something, and again, does that reference some comet that came before and something dropped from the sky? It almost seems to me like it's like a monolith stone from 2001. But there's something important about that stone. So bear that in mind. So I just want to draw some parallels. We don't know what it means. But obviously somebody way back when in Yi thought it was significant enough for them to build some forts to keep some demons out. as they characterize them. So what do you think, Jamie?
So, as an initial comment, I think you are the main point that I get from what you're saying is that Martin is making up all this stuff. He's pulling from real literature, real mythology, real religions, and he's making it his own, but he's also trying to tie it into the same theme, ultimate goal. And something you touched on, didn't outright say, was that there's some obvious parallels between the Lion of Night and the Night's King. And also there's a fort to keep them out, just like there's a wall. There's some obvious ties, but the deeper you go, everything in these books is related, if not solely because it's all spawned from Martin's brain. You mentioned in the story of him, his female turns her back upon the world and he becomes wrathful. He was trying to help the world, then he becomes wrathful. To me, that is what we're building to, that he was in love with a female, and to me, this is the Night's King. This is the same guy who was the Night's King in the past. He's just a wight whose mind was preserved. So he's got a soul, he's got a conscience, he's got free will, he's an ultimate warg. He could be a green seer if he could get to the throne, and he's just, his body doesn't need sustenance or anything like that. So he fell in love with this beautiful girl. When he meets Danny, he will see, just like Dracula did in the book, Bram Stoker's book, he will see almost a resurrection. It's never said it's a resurrection, it's just she looks the same, has some similar characteristics, and ultimately falls in love with him. It could be because he's so endearing and handsome and mesmerizing, but it could also be merely because there's this deep connection between them that goes throughout the centuries, but is not really answered. And ultimately, Danny will fall in love with the Night's King, and he can provide her with all the sexual gratification and offer her the kingdom she always wanted. There's a kind of free will because you exist within your own mind, but there's also no free will. She's got complete control. It's that juxtaposition she's always been aiming for, and that is the Lion of Night, because he found his woman. But it's also the Lion of the Night because if Danny is killed in front, if he loses his significant other again, first he loses his significant other to mankind and forgives them and comes back to offer them peace. Then he finds his significant other again. He knows that if she dies, he'll never have another. That's it. Mainly because he's going to stem society. There's no more population growth. Well, there could be between the others, and I think there will be. But that's unknown at this point. But ultimately, that's the end of his love. This time when they kill Danny in front of him, he's going to be wrathful. It's no longer I'm bringing peace. It's I'm bringing peace, but at the end of a sword, which is what Jesus said. Jesus said, if you don't hate your mother and father, don't come to me. I came here with, I didn't come here to bring peace. I came here with a sword and shield. I could find that quote. Jesus.
You mean the second coming?
He says in Matthew 10:34, Jesus says, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." And it goes on. So Matthew 10:34, Jesus says that. So Jesus is not necessarily the peace bringer. But anyway, if the Night's King were to lose, then I could see that happening. You mentioned that you don't think that he's the progeny. Do you think the Night's King is the progeny? The current Night's King is the progeny of the original Night's King? I don't think so. I mentioned that earlier. I just wanted to clarify. I do think Roos is his progeny. But that's getting more into theory territory, a little bit separated from this one. I did want to mention something that just dawned on me randomly. You mentioned the sea stone chair kind of being obsidian-like. We kind of presume it's obsidian, or at least something like it, oily, dark mineral. Well, if it is obsidian, then in order to carve it, it would end up being sharp, and it's also made out of obsidian, which is a weapon, so it's very similar to the throne that's in King's Landing. It's made out of weapons and is sharp, which I think is interesting. Heavy is
Go ahead.
heavy.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We're just talking over. Go ahead.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Bloody are the bloody is the butt that sits on the throne.
And obsidian was used for arrowheads too. It's so easy to slice and make it sharp.
Agreed.
They're just parallels here. That's all it is.
I don't really have anything else to add. What you got?
I do want to say something about Azor. You know, if you really look at the descriptions of Azor, if they're true, Azor is almost a city that is very difficult to sustain the inhabitants. It's almost like it's been polluted. You know, old Valeria appears to have erupted in some volcanic explosion, but Azor is you can't grow anything there. The streets are dirty, and you wouldn't think of that because Azor is supposed to be a kind of a city of magic, and yet they describe it as being almost hellish. So it'll be interesting, and again, I've said this before, I think if you take the map and you turn it into a globe, Azor is right connecting probably where the lands of always winter are. So that remains to be seen. That's just a theory, but it's curious. It's curious. And but anyway, I just wanted to draw some connections. And as to your thing about Jesus and the sword, you know, Rhaegar gets his prophecy and comes out and says, it appears that I must have a sword and some armor. So we'll see. So I think that's it, and I enjoyed it, honey. It was great getting back on. Thanks all you guys out there who are watching. We appreciate it.
Love you.
Have a good day, you guys.
Thank
Bye.